Um, Coming back here, and I'm going to just do a quick introduction. I think we've now got Andre, Andy, and Jacob on. So this talk about Ethereum for artists, and this is really one that I personally care a lot about. Using Ethereum for artistic pursuits, for creative pursuits through NFTs has been something very, very early, right from the beginning, going all the way back to CryptoPunks, if you remember those. Recently, this is kind of recent inflection point where you're seeing more and more of this happen. There's more happening both in the art scene and the music scene using Ethereum to help artists. So I'd like to introduce Andre, who records as RAC, and Dee and Jacob from Zora. Zora is a company that is building the infrastructure that allows artists to take control of their creative work. So welcome, guys. I'll turn the screen over to you and hand it over.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having us. I also just kind of want to take a moment to say how awesome this layout is with the lo-fi beats and all that. It's pretty sick. I'm pretty stoked about it. Thank you, Josh. I'm Andre. I make music as RAC. I've recently been working with the Zora guys. I don't know if you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Jacob, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. Hey, what's up? My name's Jacob Horne. I'm one of the co-founders of Zora. Really happy to be here today. I think we've got an awesome discussion, a lot to cover. I think the whole space for artists in particular, I think is really kind of evolved probably like 5 or 6 times over in the past 6 months. So I'm pretty hyped for this conversation. And yeah, I'll just let Dee introduce himself and then we can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, I'm Dee. Super excited to be here. Always love getting a chance to share the Zora sauce with the community and getting to work with Dre. I run everything that's creators and community over at Zora. So if you're a creator and you're thinking about doing a drop, holler at me. If you're a community that's looking to engage a creator, get excited. Really pumped about today's conversation and the future of Zora and the intersection of kind of crypto and culture. So yeah, really happy to share with you guys.
Yeah, so I guess the theme of this conversation is Ethereum is for artists, and I think maybe to just give that a broader context, I think it's important to at least address why that's the case, or how we even got here, or why this is actually important. And I don't want to dwell on this too much because we can easily fill up 4 hours talking about the problems of the music industry, or really the creative industry in general. So maybe I'll just kind of talk about very quickly about some of the issues of the music industry, and we can sort of talk about how we're trying to solve that. So, okay, where to begin? The music industry, I think it's fundamentally broken. I think it's almost beyond repair at this point. We've sort of been in this cycle for the past about 70 years, where basically the way that the industry is set up is completely hostile to artists at this point, where they basically capture the entire value of that the artist is creating. And even with the birth of the internet, we thought that might shift over, and it has to some degree, but we're still dealing with this institutional level the problems basically. And what I'm really talking about is sort of again, this is pretty broad, but this is true in almost every side of the industry. But basically, it's sort of filled with intermediaries. There's services and corporations and various people that basically take all of the profit, but I think the average artist gets about 12% of the income generated by their work. Wow. So to me that is very unfair. And not to say that the industry doesn't add value, because I think they do. I think it's important to acknowledge that. But I think we're at a point where it simply has not. It's just not working. And I think it's brought us to this kind of moment in time where we're like, okay, what can we do about this? I mean, there's various different services that are sort of popping up, and when I discovered Ethereum in about late 2016, 2017, I became kind of obsessed with this idea of disintermediation and creating an infrastructure that was actually fair and that would actually allow a free market to flourish. And I think that's really sort of just the starting point. You know, I would actually love to get the Zora guys to sort of talk about it from their perspective, but basically that's how we got here. It's like sort of a fundamentally unfair, unreasonable industry that is hostile to artists, and now we have this technology that kind of cuts them out of everything. And to me, that's super exciting. So, yes.
Completely agree. I think like if we think about the reason why the music industry and almost every other creative industry is probably like that, and our belief and perspective is that it's because it's built on the legacy like financial system. The fiat financial system involves corporations, intermediaries, and it has all of the characteristics that I think, you know, everyone in Ethereum and DeFi are completely aware of, which is, you know, it's opaque, very limited access, you know, ends up being fundamentally unfair. And, you know, the only people that can access the tools of finance, and I think like the core tool that we're talking about unlocking for artists is ownership. So in like the traditional system, like corporations and institutions have a monopoly on creative ownership. Like for you, Dre, you had to go to a record label in the earliest days of your career because they were the only ones that could cut a check. But to cut that check and pay for your day-to-day living, you had to give up, you know, 50% or more of the ownership over like the work and value that you're creating just right out of the gate. So I think like when we look to Ethereum and what we're trying to do with Zora, it's like, well, what happens if you can rebuild or like kind of take this creative industry and then build it on top of this fundamentally open financial system, which is, it is transparent, it's universally accessible, it's programmable, it's native to the internet where all of this value is being created in the first place. Which I think leads like, you know, we kind of see the death of the creative industry and kind of the emergence of like the creative economy in one way. And that's all built on top of Ethereum and what we're building on for Zora. So I think like, where does that land us? It's like, well, entirely new opportunity space because you get all of the goodness of crypto mixed with the kind of like expansiveness of the creative industry. And I think like we're probably in day zero here. Like I think like Dre, you've kind of pioneered the way a lot here. And I guess like Dee, I'd love to get your cut as well on this before we jump into maybe your journey as a pioneering artist in Ethereum, Dre.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. There's definitely a monopoly of ownership in the existing creative space, whether that's music, fashion. You see sneaker customizers like people that we've worked with at Zora along the lines of Jeff Staple, who are getting similar to Dre, where it's 12%. They're getting $5 per sneaker. Sneakers are selling for $150, reselling for $2K. You know, these sorts of issues I think are prevalent in the overall creator economy. So any way that we can leverage Ethereum and, you know, the dynamicism that it adds to creator platforms, like I think we're going to do that all that we can. And I think Dre, as we're segueing into that, is really just leading the way first on how you change ownership of your drops and ownership of your product offerings, but now even how you change ownership of your community and that medium and interaction. Again, all powered by Ethereum. Like this wouldn't even be possible without this amazing suite of tools that the community has developed and allowed us to leverage for creators like Dre.
Yeah. So I think, Dre, you've had probably one of the longest artistic journeys in Ethereum. You know, started with, do you want to talk about the progression of like kind of projects that you've launched that's gotten to the today? Like, and I guess to like cue that up, you started with the Ego token 3 years ago, and then just a couple of days ago, you've launched the RAC community token. Like, talk us through that progression and like what you were trying to do at the start and now where you've landed at and like the learnings and the things you think have been unlocked across the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. So basically in, like I mentioned in late 2016, I stumbled on a video of Vitalik Buterin talking about Ethereum, and I was like, this is amazing. This is going to change the world. You know, like I think a lot of people have that reaction, and I was like so psyched for it. I was like, this is amazing. This is so cool. Okay, like I in my head I was like, oh, this could apply to music in so many different ways. We can sort of build like this infrastructure level pipeline basically. There's all kinds of issues in the music industry for data, and like it's all siloed off into different corporations that don't share information with each other. Like things like that. There's all kinds of things that could be solved with this. And I was like, oh, this is amazing, so cool. Okay, let me look at who's doing anything in this space. And I mean, there were a couple projects, but I basically found Ujo Music, which they were part of Consensus. And I just reached out, and from there we started to work on this idea, which was actually like super basic if you really think about it. But basically, the idea was I had an album that was going to come out. It's called Ego. That's hence the name Ego Token or whatever. And the album was going to come out anyway, and it was going to come out commercially in all the typical Spotify, whatever, all the typical places. So it was like, why not additionally to that, release it on Ethereum, like put it on basically host it on IPFS, create a smart contract that is like if $10 worth of Ethereum is deposited into this contract, you get a link to IP, like a downloadable link. Basically, it's like very basic. Essentially we have this with Bandcamp. It's not like I didn't see it necessarily as like groundbreaking necessarily, but I like the idea behind it, and I think that's really what I was hoping to sort of convey is like this idea of direct kind of interaction where it's like I created this product, this album, and I'm basically selling it directly to somebody, and the only thing in the middle is a contract, and like a self-executing contract. So and it's up there in perpetuity, which I think is pretty cool. Unless IPFS goes down, which I don't think we're gonna.
I don't have any wood around.
Yeah. But so that happened. I thought that was quite successful. We everybody that bought that album also got issued this token called the Ego token. At the time we were thinking about it, NFTs are still pretty new. But the idea was actually it is some sort of an NFT, except it's not. It's like the idea behind it, the intent was there. So we basically gave the Ego token to everybody that bought the album off of Ethereum, and and then the bear market hits, and a lot of projects started to fizzle out, and Ujo unfortunately was a bit of a casualty of that. And I sort of stayed involved and interested in the space in general, and during that period, I think I looked at various different, during this whole process, we talked about like tokenizing publishing ownership, and like there's all kinds of ways to sort of, apply this to Ethereum. But, we were just, I still was like excited about it because like, despite the price or whatever, that's kind of irrelevant. The people kept building, and I think that's what really kept me going and interested in this space, because I continue to see development regardless of price action or whatever. So during that period, I saw a bunch of projects kind of fizzle out. There was one in particular, Audius, that has sort of launched a little bit after Ujo, and I think they, in many ways, they're sort of the spiritual successor, and they sort of benefited from a lot of the ideas that Ujo built, and I think Ujo perhaps was just a little bit too early. I'm sure a lot of people can relate that sometimes when you launch a product, it's just the timing can be kind of a big deal. So okay, I feel like I'm carrying on too long, but basically, okay, so Audius kind of succeeded there, and I more recently got involved with them as well. But so which eventually brought us to I think earlier this year, where I finally wrote a new album. Like I kind of spent 3 years working on that and ready to kind of do that. And like I obviously wanted to do something with Ethereum, and to sort of continue that path. And actually one of the guys, Jack from Ujo, from the original team, actually introduced me to Jacob, and we started talking about this idea of tokenizing like a physical product. And I always thought this is an interesting idea, something we had talked about like back in the day. And it's like, how do we do this? Like, how do we really, make this accessible and easy? And I feel like Zora really kind of nailed it. And, basically by the model being, you create a market for it first, and then at a later date, you can, so you can have sort of price discovery for this physical product using Ethereum and basically using Uniswap at the time, and which I think is pretty cool. And then, actually, as of yesterday, we opened up redemptions, so people will essentially burn the token, and we're going to mail the tape to them, so they finally get the tape. Okay, so that the I guess maybe early. This is somewhat in the beginnings of the DeFi, stuff that started happening, and people kind of traded this thing like crazy, and I think we went from $20 to $9.50, and like it was kind of a wild day for me. I didn't expect that, but I think it sort of answered this really interesting question: is like, what is the actual value of this limited edition good? Like if I set that price, if I came out of the gate and was like, this tape is $450, people are like, you are insane, like, this like, like this makes no sense at all. But because we released it at $20 and the market decided, people were like, hey, fair. I mean, the market decided that this is the value of this cassette. I mean, maybe it's speculative, sure, but like that, the market decided, and like I didn't decide that, the market did. So I feel like that's a really interesting concept, and something that I love to say about this is like, it turns out that music does have value, because so often we've sort of been ingrained with this idea that recorded music doesn't have value, that you're supposed to capture value through selling like t-shirts or something. Like, that's ridiculous. Like music has value, like I don't know where we've sort of gone off this track, but anyway, I'll get off my soapbox on that. But but basically that kind of leads us to this moment where where we sort of saw this moment, like where we're applying markets to some degree, in this tokenization, like it's sort of maybe a way to measure it, or a way to quantify it to some degree. And I don't mean just financially. I mean like actually just, if you own a token, there's some level of ownership over this, whatever it is, whatever you decide it can be. And to some extent, we saw that with DeFi, like, with governance tokens and YAMs and like all kinds of fascinating, interesting projects that popped up over the past, couple months. So which kind of led us to this path of talking about the RAC token, which, I like basically, like I in the midst of COVID, again, I have to sort of give this a broader context, but basically, like in the midst of COVID, I started streaming a lot, and I started going on Twitch like 2 to 3 times a week, doing 4-hour sessions, and this sort of community evolved out of it, and it was very fascinating to me, something that I hadn't really experienced. So for example, like I average about 2.5 million unique listeners every month on Spotify, but I don't have any access to them. I can't even message them. I have no way to reach them. Every once in a while, Spotify allows me to message them about tour dates, but even then it's like heavily curated, and they get to basically edit whatever I say, things like that. So now suddenly this really powerful thing is happening, where my community is like talking to each other, and they're sort of bonding over that, and like whether it's Twitch chat, and then that moves into Discord, and maybe some of the YouTube community also moved over, and basically this Discord server started to become sort of a hub for this emergent community that I couldn't have faked this. I couldn't have made this up. Like maybe my music was sort of the catalyst for it. And that was sort of the reason that brought people together to some degree. But once they're there, now they're like playing games together. They're sharing cat photos. They're like sharing recipes for like certain types of food. Like we have like coders in there that do talk about that kind of it's a very diverse group of people. And now there's sort of an emergent community, and it's still relatively small, but I found that to be super powerful. And so, okay, fast forward to this idea of tokenization, and it's like, okay, well, why don't we just give them all a token? Why don't we give a token to everybody that supported me over the years through Patreon, through Bandcamp, through merch, through basically anywhere we can have an email, or like Twitch subscribers, like basically anything like that that we can reach them. Let's give them a token, give them ownership of this community, and let's try to create a community. Like, let's try to sort of enforce that, and give people a say in it, and have some sense of like belonging, and I mean, that's basically as far as we got. And like, of course, we have like all kinds of ideas, and I feel like I've been talking for a while, so you guys should definitely jump in here. But basically, like, we launched a couple of days ago. We gave it all retroactively to all these people that have supported me over the years, and now we're just starting to, first steps, getting people kind of onboarded, getting used to the technology, and learning from that, and hopefully building tools and things that matter to us, and that aren't just giving it to Instagram or Twitter or whatever, So it's like we're creating our own little social graph, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I think to like kind of frame what's happening here, like we kind of speak about like 3 levels of ownership. There's kind of like at the base level, there's the products and the artworks and the creative output that's been created by artists. So, we started with like physical goods, and for you, that was like the cassette tape. I think like NFTs and like crypto artworks or internet native artworks like definitely fit in this category of like, okay, we're actually building ownership over things that can now be like kind of captured in these different types of tokens and can be held by the community, used by the community. The second level above that, which we've just kind of pushed into, is like the communities or the brands of the creators themselves. It's like, okay, like there is a group of people who just like love and want to be a part of like the RAC community, kind of like the Bayhive, or you pick your like
Beehive or the Swifties or the Beliebers. Now they're just RAC token holders.
Yeah. So like, yeah, so for like musicians, like there are these massive communities, but it's like, it's obviously the same thing for fashion brands as well. Like all these brands have like cult followings, and groups of people who want to unite in some way. And then obviously like the level above all of that, where you can kind of like invert it, it is like the system itself. So the value system being like Zora, then built on top of and empowered by Ethereum. And I think like the community piece is particularly interesting because it's like this 2-way ownership. So like you were saying that you move into Twitch, you've got Patreon, IG, Spotify, all these different platforms where your communities kind of come together and interact with you in different ways. But you have, and not until I guess RAC token, you did not have a single place where you could actually own that community. Like the best you could do is I'm going to get an email list and maybe compile that together. And, I think a lot of people on Twitter talk about this, like, how do I exit from like Twitter into like some space where I can own my community in like one spot? But I think like tokens are the perfect mechanism for that, because if you think about the community end of that spectrum, they don't want to deal with like an email list or get like updates from you and email back. That's a shitty platform in itself. It's a great platform, but it's like shitty for the purpose we're talking about. So the ownership is like you kind of having this like single unified space to bring your community together as one. But then for your community, it's like they kind of have an incentive to take that jump with you because they are getting ownership in it too. So it's like, oh, I don't have to give away my email and do this thing. I'm actually getting something that might have real tangible value and could empower me to like go build alongside, the coders in your Discord or the people sharing hats or whatever it is, which is kind of crazy. It's like, it does feel like a new paradigm in a way where it's like community, creator, now have this like one place like unify. And I think like if what's happened in DeFi is any clue, it's like, with Wi-Fi, it's like, all right, now you have like people have this token and now they feel empowered to go like create the logo for this thing. Or I'm going to jump in and like submit a PR in this GitHub because I'm like, I have ownership in this community. I think what we will see for artists is like, well, what does it mean for artists and community to start creating it as one, or like the line between those two things being blurred? I'd love to get like, Dee, I know you got thoughts here too. Like, I'd love to get your take on like, how do you think that plays out, or like what this kind of community token piece looks like with the RAC launch that we just kind of like got out a couple of days ago.
Yeah, for sure. I think Dre touched on this, and you've touched on this as that second layer of ownership. It's a new medium for direct to consumer. So Dre now doesn't have any platform in between him and his community. It's just if you hold this token, you're now a member of the community. And I think that's super unique in being able to aggregate everybody across these platforms. And then the future, I always talk about this at Zora. I think culture on a whole, like the culturally relevant industry, whether that's entertainment, music, or fashion, Dre being a pioneer is just waking up to the community organization, alignment, and incentives that are kind of tucked into crypto. I think crypto has some of the most powerful communities arguably in the world. There's no place really like it on the planet. And its ability, to your point, Jacob, to give people that reason to organize themselves, or that reason to take the jump to the new platform, and that reason being the ownership itself in that community. I think that's something very unique to crypto. People join pre-sales, people, coordinate around a dev and then figure out how to get a logo, and then they get it on CoinGecko. And like, these are all random people that you never met and that you probably will never meet, all coming together to create value together. Now imagine what that would be like if it was in pursuit of a Grammy or an Oscar, or like some of the more amazing real world outputs. I think we're just now starting to scratch the surface there. Like we wrote this in the manifesto that these communities, if they get organized and aligned properly, they could build cities. Like imagine if the Beehive or the Swifties had a shared bank account. You'd be seeing Taylor Swift get her masters pretty easy, or you'd be seeing, statues of Beyonce all over Houston. And so I think that these are the sorts of opportunities that we'll see in the future for community tokens, as people start to wake up just how powerful that organization and alignment is when you have that ownership piece.
Yeah, absolutely. I just, one last thing to add is like that glue that comes from like collective ownership is super powerful, and like we've seen that probably more on the financial side of DeFi, and I mean even early on with different projects, even from the 2017 era, but even to some extent Ethereum, if you sort of fell into this space, you kind of want to see it succeed. And I think it's sort of like these multiple layers, and I mean, obviously there's some negatives, it breeds a little bit of tribalism sometimes, but like for the most part, I think it's a generally positive thing, in a way to sort of organize and create value for each other. We were maybe going to take some questions. I don't know, because we got a couple minutes left, or
yeah, we should.
Yeah, we got a couple minutes left. If we have any questions in the chat, we can definitely facilitate that. I'll just ask our team behind the scenes what we're seeing in the chat. I don't have all the windows open at the same time.
The magicians.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you guys on the spot. I was just
fine. I mean, I've got a question while we're waiting here. One thing I'm kind of curious about. So like, you just said, if Beehive had a token, you'd see people using that to, fund construction of statues in Houston. How do you think those communities will interact, right? Because one thing, once everything's in the market, you can have interactions between these communities. You can have people trying to increase or decrease the price of someone else's token. I mean, imagine two artists are having some sort of beef, and they're totally financialized communities are trying to kind of interact with each other in maybe a positive or negative way. Like, what do you imagine there? Like, give me your craziest scenario of what this looks like when it's all financialized.
Well, I think like the first part of that question was like, how do the Beehive actually organize, and what does that look like? Like, tokens really are like minimum viable DAO in a way. It is like, okay, let's just get ownership into people's hands here. And like, that's giving them this kind of like loose reason to start interacting with each other. I can very easily see a progression where, an RAC token or a brand token like St. Fame, or even real world existing brands like Supreme or something like that, they would take on this method. The progression is, okay, now we have this collective ownership in this thing. Now, how can we start to collectively allocate, pool, use capital to take on some shared endeavor as a community? So I think like, I would imagine in that Beehive case, it's like, well, you have some subset of that community, like use things like DAOs as a way to start like pooling and allocating that capital together. Obviously, there's a lot that needs to happen in the world for that to change. Like, the very loose tie we have between physical and digital is like, let's create a token redeemable for something. It's going to take a lot for, a DAO to pay a physical construction site. And maybe it's not even physical. It's like, what we're talking about is, the Beehive funding the construction of like statues in crypto voxels of Decentraland.
Yeah, or like a virtual exhibit or something like that.
We're applying all these kind of like, world 1.0 physical concepts into what's going to happen in the virtual world over time. It's great. Like, how big does this get? I mean, I think the creative industry has been facing all these like real problems, but I think like there's no reason that this same model of like distributing ownership and giving communities control over capital couldn't apply to literally everything. You know, like we just kind of like published our like manifesto yesterday. Like, we do think that like any collective endeavor of like humanity can be taken on by just giving ownership of and control of like communities to the communities themselves. That sounds kind of circular, but like there's been no way for communities to own themselves prior to crypto. They've always been disintermediated by, or they've been intermediated or by like corporations or platforms. So I think like, yeah, as big as it can get, I mean, it should be the new way of like organizing, period. Like, corporation as a model is dead. Now it's all about like community ownership and DAOs. And yeah, what can the internet do at that scale? Who knows?
I want to like sneak one thing in for the interaction piece between communities. I had this thought today actually, and I was like, man, community tokens introduce this really strong concept of accountability to creators and to communities. I think you sometimes see that playing out in personal tokens, but it's kind of cool that like, I don't know, if a community token or a creator token got like, this is a crass example, but I'm going to say it, but like R. Kelly, right. All of that hits the fan. Like, everybody's dumping their community tokens, and R. Kelly's community is now worth nil, as it should be, because he committed what are virtually atrocities, right? I think that's a new accountability mechanism where now the creator is directly tied to like the community has real ownership of the creator value almost. Whereas in the sense of like the label, they might let R. Kelly continue to make music and whatnot. And like, yeah, we won't buy it, but like he's still getting supported to some extent, right? So there's like a dangerously strong accountability mechanism that I think we'll see prove out there, which is kind of cool. Like it's cool on the up and it's cool on the down, which I think will be really unique.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thanks guys. We are out of time. There were more questions in the chat. I mean, I encourage all y'all to go join the chat. I mean, there's an event in Discord too. There's tons of people who want to work on kind of creative projects, projects about music, about art. So as much as you guys want to hang out in the Discord and give people ideas, we'd love to see that. So thank you so much for joining us today.